Good afternoon, everyone. It is Evan from the Trade Risk, Wednesday, April 22nd, here with a market recap video. We're going to look at some trade ideas for the rest of the week. We also are going to look at some earnings reports on some of these names that we frequently follow as they're happening tonight. So let's jump right in. We'll start with the SPY per usual, and you can see we had a nice session today, closed up 0.5%, and we are at the top of our immediate risk range here. So 209 to 211, that's the range we've been talking about now for some time. And you can see early in the morning we tested, and look how sensitive this market is when it tested the bottom end of this range today, right around 209. It was looking pretty ugly, and then we saw a real sharp reversal all the way up to 210. We held 210 for most of the afternoon, and we proceeded to march onward and up to the top end of this range. So for now, I think a constructive eye has to be at least given to this market, given how we closed today and how we closed off of the lows, because it could have went the other way. We could have closed hard, we could have pierced below 209, but again we were rescued. So I think if you're bullish, you want to see some continuation. Again, we're in the midst of earnings season, so there's a lot of cross currents as these individual companies report, but essentially you're looking for this break of 211. Look how many times now in the past few weeks, going back to mid-March now, that 211 has played an important role here, and we've got rejected from it many times. So again, if we keep pounding up against it, chances are we will eventually get through it. But let's see what happens. Let's look for some continuation tomorrow. So far, you got to remain at least pretty constructive here, and especially when you look at something like the Qs, which today broke this pattern of lower highs. So we saw the ultimate high here back in March. When we rolled back over, we didn't quite get to the new highs here, and then we rolled back over again, tested back up here in April, and now here we are again. So we are now back above this resistance level. So 109, this area here is very important, and we're now marching up above it. So you almost have a pseudo little breakout here on a short-term time frame. If you're using this high as your line in the sand, then you do have your first real close above it. Yesterday was sort of a push, given how we closed, and today with this tail again, really giving some extra sort of credit to the bulls now that we are above this high. So that looks good. Let's look at the small cap index. You can see still in a holding pattern, needs to get back above 126.25 more or less, but again still arguably the most healthy of the indices, given the smooth uptrend that we've now been in since since mid or early February. Let's look at some other markets now. We'll look at TLT. This market got really beat up today, broke down below this 129.50 support level. So this had been holding now for over a month, and it was staying pretty tight. So this is pretty actionable. It just moved too quickly for me. I would have loved to get on board the short. I missed it, and now given how it acted today, the 126, these lows now become the level of interest on the downside. So let's see if we get some continuation lower there. USO slid lower just a little bit today. This $20 level, we danced around it quite a bit here at the beginning of this week and last week, looking like, hey, we might try and move up above it, but ultimately this overhead supply at this level has overtaken what bulls had kind of in the tank. So for now, we're cooling off. We're at the top end of this range. Again, if you look at a weekly chart, you can see, of course, we've been in a very strong downtrend now for multi-months, and we are at the early stages of potentially trying to carve out some type of base. So I'm still of the belief that we could be talking about this range for quite some time. Maybe even for the next several months to the next 6 months, while this market tries to find a bottom and really sort of solidify the levels around here. So USO, again, $20. Keep that level on watch, of course. Downside, $19 is an interesting round number that the market has responded to in the past. So you want to keep that level on watch. But if this, this near term short uptrend has been intact, so let's see if that can continue, and who knows, we could still see a breakout above $20 later in this week. Let's move on. UNG has, is trying to stabilize here. This is sort of just still a mess. 1360 on the upside, that's what I'd be watching. Otherwise, you got to watch $12.50, the recent lows in natural gas. Gold, this one rolled over, just looks very similar to TLT, had some pretty nice defined support right around 114.50. It broke down today. Again, this is still a messy chart. I think 110 certainly, the lows here not out of reach if this really wants to get back going on the downside. Otherwise, you got to just see if the bulls can step in here and make a higher low, some type of inflection point above 112 to 113, somewhere in there, make a lower high or a higher high, and then try and repair this and continue to the upside. Silver, same thing, very sloppy, almost back to the lows. 1480 or so is probably where you need to keep that on watch. Next, let's move into some stocks here. Apple had a really nice day. I know earnings are out next week. I think they are on Monday. I'm not sure though. They're coming up, and it's tough to do a whole lot here when you have a stock going into earnings pretty soon, but this pattern sort of just keeps morphing here. That's why I usually like to just stay with horizontal levels. But I think, this little rising trend line is potentially still intact. I think 129.50 on the upside, but again, earnings is just going to trump all of this, so let's not read too much into it. Google, a lot of these names are going to be going into earnings soon. Google, same thing here, very nice day. Reclaim this 542 level of interest. Look at a weekly chart. It's just in no man's land in the almost the dead center of this longer term consolidation, this longer term range. So I think if it gets continuation of beyond today's highs, you could see it move pretty quickly. It's relatively thin in here, so let's see if Google can continue its upside movement. Now Facebook is reporting right now, and it looks like it's pretty much flat here. I'm looking at my other screen here. Earnings release is out now in Facebook, and it's trading right at $84 here. This is about 10 past 4 Eastern time. So earnings are out. Facebook is flat. So not looking like a whole lot is going to change from the technical landscape right now. That could, of course, change by the time we get to the open tomorrow morning. Let's see if it does. But for now, Facebook, it's generally a sort of a win, at least in the bulls camp. I would say it's holding. If it opens up around $84, it's still holding all of this recent breakout that it had back at the end of March here, and it's above this this kind of critical $80, $81 support level. So I think as long as it trades above $81, I think Facebook is a name that you'd want to effectively look to be long, because it is acting pretty healthy. So keep an eye on Facebook into tomorrow. Twitter is also trying to restabilize again. Had this nice kind of long drawn out downdraft here, back from 53.50 all the way down to as low as 50 and a quarter, but it is now back above around $51. So let's look for that to stay constructive into its earnings. It still has another week or so before earnings, so that one will be interesting. Netflix also, this one obviously had a monster earnings last week, with a real large gap up. It is cooling off right now, so just give it more time to play out. I don't have too many actionable levels to look at in this one just yet. Amazon, I don't know if this one's reporting soon. It might be tomorrow, could be today. This one's acting real well now, back above 388 or so. Let's look at a weekly chart. You can see the all-time highs in this are right above 400, right around 407, 408. So we could be in store for potentially a retest of that, especially if earnings come out favorable. So keep that one on watch. Alibaba, this one is staying pretty weak now at the lower end of this range. It's been a lot of fake outs. It had a nice kind of quick move up to the highs here right around $87, ultimately failed, and now it's back here. So I'm not sure when earnings are, but $81 is a pretty important level. Look at a weekly chart here. the all-time lows for this recent IPO, so I would be pending earnings, would be interested in getting short this name below $81. Who knows if we get there, but that's something that I do have on my radar. GoPro had a really nice day today. I almost took it long, but I held off just because I already had some long exposure that I didn't want to add to. But GoPro reports late next week, I believe, but it had a really nice up 4% session today, breaking out very cleanly from this sort of flag here, right, as it came down off of this $47 level, retested 44 support, held, and had a nice bounce today. So GoPro looks pretty good. Again, earnings out in about a week, so be mindful of that. And finally, Tesla. Tesla had a monster day today as well, 5% nearly, back to the top end of this really, this intermediate, almost long-term range, you could call it now. If you look at a weekly chart, you could see it looks like these lows, even though we pierced below them right around 188, are trying to hold. So I think this is a pretty important level, right where it closed, 220. If we can get back above essentially today's highs, I think Tesla becomes a lot more in play on the long side, and that's something I will be looking forward to, because I like trading Tesla, but there wasn't much to do while it was in this sort of messy range. So I'm not sure when earnings are on that, so you want to keep that on watch going forward. Now let's look at a few names here. I don't have too many today for some trade ideas, but the first, AMAG, this one has been holding up pretty well now, had a really nice run throughout the month of February into March. It's been cooling off for a few weeks now, and this is just something that caught my eye. Still needs a little more time perhaps, but above 58.60, 58.70, this cluster of highs, you could look for some continuation there in AMAG. Next is DPZ. This one actually didn't close as strong as I was looking at it. I think earlier today when I wrote this one down, we were right around $100 or above it. This one still needs more time. It's just a tight consolidation pattern. It's been in a monster uptrend, so really needs to get back above $100.50 or so. Not the cleanest, but depending on your strategy, you might find that interesting. VC is another one, auto parts name. This has got some pretty clear resistance right here, about 103.25. Closed just mildly red on the day, but it could get going here if it can find some more legs above today's highs. Monster, I've talked about this one for a little while now. I think this is a pretty widely watched name. Got this open gap. It's been holding very pent up above it. So again, above 140 or so is pretty much what you need here in Monster. And finally, IBM. I actually did take this home long today. Just barely made it through the threshold here of what I would consider actionable long, but I did take it. Essentially 165 is the breakout level I wanted to see it hold. It clearly did it on Monday, 420. It closed above it, but earnings were out the next day. So we saw yesterday's reaction, which was mildly negative, and then some of that was recovered today. And I like the base here, especially on a weekly chart. You can see how we're trying to poke our head up above it now. So, I think 165 is a really fine line in the sand for me. And we'll see if this can get some continuation. I need it to really go here and get back above today's highs. But I'm going with it for now. I am long some IBM, and we'll see what happens with that going forward. So I hope that helps. Quick recap and some trade ideas for you. The markets are starting to try and rumble higher for another attempt. Let's see if we get it, at least in the SPY. Again, the Qs are basically in motion. I would consider them in motion. In the IWM and the SPY, we are still waiting for them. So thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.